So I ended up renting a room in an Airbnb for the first time ever, and it was like a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I would prefer to just have the whole space. But renting the room was barely cheaper than renting a hotel room, like maybe by about $300 for the entire stay. So it seemed significant enough to give it a chance. Also, the house is like a historic building. It was established in 1887. Like everything in there is basically from the original building. They've done some upgrades, but mostly it's like all original wood, everything. So the home itself was really beautiful. And it's so funny because after my first night there, so I showed up about 8 p.m. My first night there, I called my husband when I got settled into my room, and I told him, this lady that I just met is probably the nicest person I've ever met in my entire life. Like, she was so cordial. She was respectful. She was really sweet. She gave me a compliment on my shirt. She told me that she really liked my attitude. She was really just generous and nice. She also had it was like a bed and breakfast kind of establishment. So she had supplied some muffins, some fruit like bananas, apples, and orange. There was different like drinks that were just sitting on top of like this display. And she also had like some granola bars and things like that. So there was plenty of stuff to have for breakfast, which I was happy about. The amenities otherwise were like there was a TV, kitchen, I guess the dining room table if you would want to sit down and eat there, that would be a shared space. And then the bathroom was a shared space. There was a room that had a bathroom in it, but it was considered like the bridal suite, and I would assume that would be more expensive. Anyway, that wasn't the room that I was staying in. There was 3 or 4 other rooms two other rooms besides mine that you could go in and use the same bathroom. So the bathroom had a bathtub, and then it had like a shower, handheld shower head that you could like detach, and then you could basically sit down and take a shower. Anyway, so I got a tour of the house. She really like knew everything about the house. She knew all of like the original, the bed that I was sleeping in had its original box springs. Like she knew like everything about the house because she had purchased it. And it turned out that she lived across the street. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I've never had to like tell somebody when I'm showing up. Especially with an Airbnb, we've always had like, a padlock to get a key or some kind of code to get in the door, or they would unlock it for you, or you'd have an app or whatever it was. But I've never rented a room either. So that being said, I go rent this room, and I'm like in constant communication with this lady about like when I'm showing up, but like that, my flight got delayed, first of all, so I had to let her know about that. And then my son is checking into these dorms at Iowa Western Community College. This is literally the entire story, so I give you guys the entire backstory because I really want to know like if I should say anything and what I should say. So I get there at the time that I said, and she was present, which was great. She tells me she lives across the street with her husband. She's giving us a tour of the house, and we get to this like area that's like kind of like a bar area. The house is huge. It's like 4 stories from below ground to the top. And my room was on the 2nd floor. And she tells me, so we're walking to the bar area, and I look through this like glass door, which is all dark, and there's like a dude sitting in a rocking chair. And it like startled me a little bit. And she was like, oh, that's just my husband, David. We have a dog named, I think Sandy, that lives here. And she stays in that room. She's not allowed out. And he's going to kennel her before he leaves. And so I was like, okay, so they live across the street, but their dog lives here. I'm like putting it all together in my head. The dog's not going to get out. And I told her that's great because I'm allergic to dogs. I found out when I landed that there was no locked doors. She says, like, my husband's going to leave here at 10 p.m. every night. He's going to turn on the alarm, and he's going to lock the front door because the front door only locks from the inside. So there's 2 doors. One door that's like big and wooden, and like she literally walked me downstairs and like was shoving her hip into the door every time she was trying to lock it to show me how to lock it. And she's like, I know you'll get it. And then there's another door that if you don't close it, the wind or like the shifting of the house or whatever, because it's so old, will like make it rock back and forth. So I made sure to always close that door because I didn't want to be woken up in the middle of the night by a waving door, right? Anyway, so there's the front door and the second door. I believe what they did was lock the front door from the inside and set the alarm and exit out of maybe a back door that I didn't see, or I'm not sure. Around 9:45 or so, they they locked up, and I was like, okay, great, it's locked. There's an alarm system. That's great. I wish that there was a way for me to enter and exit on my own without having like setting off the alarm. But come to find out, like the area is kind of shady anyway, so like I didn't really question any of that. My first day, I kind of just like unpacked and went to sleep. And the next day, I leave for a while, and then I came back to the house, and I'm telling them, like, you know, as I'm coming and going, because that was a request to know when I'll be at the house and when I won't be. But the wife, Deborah, told me that her husband was going to be staying at the house and would be there basically all day. And I don't know if that was like for me to like be able to come and go as I please, but they literally lived across the street, so I wasn't really sure why this husband would just kind of be lurking in the house. Granted, they have a dog over there, but again, like, why aren't they? Anyway, doesn't matter. Not my business. But I wasn't really super comfortable taking a bath that morning, knowing that the bathroom door doesn't lock. And I ended up like talking to some of the parents while we were at the baseball games, and they're like, well, a lot of us are staying here, some of us are staying here, but my favorite parents are staying at this Holiday Inn, which you can see behind me. So I was like, man, I feel like that would be much more comfortable for me to just be able to enter and exit as I please, not have to like make sure that I can get in or out. And so I asked this really sweet lady, I said, I'm a little uncomfortable here. I would like to request to lessen my stay. And she just replied, I prefer you didn't. And so I responded with, you know, like, okay, I understand your feelings. Can we compromise? Maybe I can stay a couple more days and then end my stay somewhere else. And she was then unresponsive, but she was very responsive up until this point. So I didn't know if like I upset her or was just like, okay, well, I'm going to send this request anyway. Maybe she's busy at work and like, maybe she'll just accept it and we'll move on. But she denied my request to lessen my stay or modify my the amount of days that I was there. So I felt kind of like trapped, and that wasn't a good feeling. But also I decided like, okay, I'm gonna just stay here because I can't really afford to go anywhere else anyway, especially if I'm gonna pay her for the entirety of my stay. I'm not gonna be able to afford a hotel on top of that. But you know, I talked to my husband, and Warren was like, I don't feel comfortable with this like dude in the house, and you're the only people there, like, and there's no locks, you know, it's not comfortable. I expected that the reservation was not cancelable, right? So anyway, I asked her like, okay, so if I'm here and like I have some downtime, am I allowed to watch the TV, and can I use the kitchen, please? The whole purpose for me like really renting an Airbnb, other than like saving a couple bucks, was so that I could cook there. I prefer to cook. I just like the ability to not have to eat out every time I have to eat. So I wanted to cook in the kitchen, and she ignored those questions in my texts. Anyway, I got invited to go to the casino with my favorite couple, and so I accepted. And I texted her at about like 5 o'clock and told her I got invited to go to the casino tonight. I might be back later than 10 o'clock. Would you please advise me on what to do if that's the case? I don't want to set off the alarm when I'm just going to be late. She didn't respond at all, and it was like 8:30. I realized we had to be up and to pick up the boys at like 6:40 the next morning. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go back now and get some sleep and stop gambling or whatever. So I was leaving the casino, and I was texting her, and I just said, you know, I will be back much before 10 p.m., so no worries. And then she texted me back, and she's like, just call me. It's not a problem. Super simple. Go have fun. And I was like, okay, but I literally just told you that I'm on my way back, so I don't know why you would say that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She gave me the green light to call her at any time, which was comforting. So I got there at about 9-ish, and 11:46 comes around, and I hear the front door start to rumble. And when the front door starts to rumble, I immediately pause my iPad. So I call Warren, or I text Warren and was like, I think somebody might be trying to break into the house. Then I called the hostess 2 times. She didn't answer either time, so I'm texting her. I text her about probably 4 or 5 times in a row. Deborah, I think somebody's trying to get into the house. It sounds like the front door is trying to be opened right now. Can you please answer your phone? I'm a little bit afraid. I just need to talk to you. I wish you would. And then I called her again a couple more times, and I'm like, I really wish you would answer. I don't feel safe. At that point, I go check really quick. So I sneak out the door, and I look down to the front door, and the second door is moving back and forth. The one that I know I closed for sure. And then I hear more noise, and so I kind of like jolt back in my room. And then I locked the door with the skeleton key, and it actually locked because I checked it. And I was like, okay, I feel at least okay that my door locks. Thank God. And Warren is like, the lady's not answering. He's like, just call the police. I'm trying to be quiet and listen because I need to just hear where this like person is, if they're in the house or not. And then I hear footsteps throughout the downstairs, and I was like, okay, yeah, no, fuck this. Somebody's definitely in the house. I'm calling the police. And this lady wasn't answering my texts or my calls. I called 4 times, texted her probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 times. So I call the police. They come by. When he gets there, he like does a pan of the perimeter. He doesn't see any cars. He doesn't see like the gates open or anything. And so obviously I'm safe, right? So like nothing happened. And when I went down there, when the cop got there and I felt safe enough to walk down the stairs, I noticed that that door was actually closed again. And when I opened it, the front door was also locked. So when I went outside to talk to the police officer, I unlocked the door with my hip a little bit and then went outside to talk to the officer. And he's like, look, I get a lot of calls in this area, but I don't ever get them for this house. It's well lit. There is a security system. And I feel safe about leaving if you feel safe about me leaving you. And I was like, well, now that you're here and I've been able to like come down here, I feel a little bit better. I'm just going to lock my door and try to get some rest. At that time, I had like already packed up all my shit just waiting for this cop, because after the footsteps were gone, that was all I heard. And so I was just kind of waiting for him to get there to just make me feel better, really, was all it was. Anyway, when I opened the door, the alarm went off, and it was just like, oh my. The alarm ends up turning off, so I go back upstairs, I call Warren back, and then the cop rings the doorbell. And I'm like, I gotta go. So I go back downstairs, and I'm talking to the police officer through the door. And I just tell him, like, he's like, we got an alarm call. I'm like, if I open this door, the alarm's gonna go off again, and I just don't want that to happen. He's like, yeah, no problem. We actually got an alarm call, but if it was because you opened the door to talk to me, then that makes sense. I needed to, double check. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's from opening this door, so I don't want to do that again. And so he said, bye and have a good night. And so he left, I left. Closed that second door again and went upstairs and locked myself in the room. Deborah, the host, starts texting me at like 4:27 in the morning about how the house is safe because the cops came to do an alarm call. I was going to be charged with $200 of a fine, and that I was going to have to absorb that cost because it was my fault, and that there's no ghosts in the house, and that it was David locking up at midnight and there was nothing to worry about. There absolutely was somebody in the house, and I wasn't just hallucinating. And the thought of ghosts, like, yeah, of course, that crossed my mind when I first got there, like, this old ass house. But after the first night of sleeping there, I was like not afraid at all. I felt totally safe. But the fact that there was actually somebody in the house, and they could have just told me, like, hey, David's gonna lock up at midnight. When I was there in front of them, that probably would have been a good idea, but instead they'd said nothing, and I expected him to lock up at 10. So 2 hours later, when all this commotion's going on, I have no idea what's happening, and the hostess is not answering, even though she told me to just call anytime. Anyway, I ended up calling the non-emergency police number that I had called the night before to ask them about these said fees, and the lady was like, I would absolutely not worry about that. We do have an alarm system, fine, but that's for like businesses. If they have alarms that are consistently going off and we have to keep sending officers out there and they're taking them away from potential crime, that the officers being taken away and like having their time tied up, they would find a business for that. But they typically don't go after residential homes, and unless they had like recurring instances where the cops were showing up there for alarms going off. But she said, but the fact that the cop was like responding to your call and you opened the door to talk to him and he was already there and the alarm went off, like she's like, there's no way the city's gonna find you for that. She's like, I would just not even worry about that. At the end of the day, I don't want to slander her, right? Like, I don't want to get on Airbnb because she wrote a review about me already, which I'm sure is atrocious. I mean, I don't know why that would be the case, because I requested to leave early and then I ended up canceling my reservation because that's what Airbnb customer service told me to do. So I called the non-emergency police number. They told me, don't worry about that fine. That's absolutely not happening. And I don't even think it's that much anyway. And then I called Airbnb customer support, and the guy was like, okay, well, because it notates that it's a shared space, I can't really make a claim for the husband being in the house, right? If she's trying to impose additional fees, I don't see that on Airbnb, but if she does that, please let me know, because that would have to be something that was pre-indicated. And she was telling me, like, it's in your paperwork, you should have known, da-da-da. The paperwork is literally right here, and it says nothing about a fee. Look, I mean, I could read this 50 times over, because the wording on it is so thick. Like, if you want to screenshot that and flip it and read it, here's the back just in case. Like, there's nothing about fines. There's nothing about a fine in here. It says, turn on the alarm system around 10 p.m. each evening and secure all of the doors. Just call if you need anything. David and I will accommodate your arrivals and departure schedule. There are no keys. Let us know if you have questions. Well, she wasn't accommodating. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, according to Airbnb's rules, that was not something that I could, like, make a claim about. They were going to protect me if she really did impose this $200 fee, right? But what I did have evidence of, and what they are going to make a claim for, is, so he helped me cancel my reservation, so I got, like, I don't know, 1/3 of the money back that I had initially put in, so that's great. What I could go after her for, because I felt, like, really attacked, to be honest. Like, I know that I could be potentially being, like, sensitive, but the fact that she just ignored me and my questions and, like, basically was non-responsive once all I did was request to leave early, and she denied me. And then she was, like, her true color, she was like a fucking sociopath is what it felt like. She was, like, preying on the fact that I didn't have a choice, you know? And it just felt, the vibe was really off, and the fact that, like, her husband's just, like, there. I'm sure David's a really nice guy, but telling my husband that I'm in a house by myself with some dude that I don't know is not flying, and Warren's like, if you're uncomfortable, get the fuck out of there. So, like, that happened. So, like, my personal attacks, I don't feel like I want to talk about, and I don't want to, like, slander this lady that I think is a total fucking snake, because who all of a sudden is like, oh, by the way, you owe me another $200. Anyway, but what Airbnb could go after her for was the fact that she promised a TV and a kitchen, which sounds so stupid. Like, the kitchen, yeah, I get that, but the TV is like, I don't give a fuck, whatever. But the fact that she promised those things, and then when I asked about them, she ignored my request and didn't confirm nor deny the fact that there was a kitchen or a space available for me to use, that they could potentially make a claim about that and maybe get the rest of my stay refunded based off of that alone. The only thing that I feel like people should know is that there's no keys to the house. Like, you have to let them know when you're coming and going. The other thing that I want to tell people is, this husband is potentially going to stay there the entirety of your stay, which shouldn't bother you, but there is no lock on the bathroom door in case you wanted to shower in privacy. That's not going to happen. Or it could happen if he doesn't open it, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. But, like, the fact that it's not your space and you can't lock the door and have any privacy at all, I think should be 100% clear in writing. And honestly, if I never asked to leave, she would have been the nicest person I'd ever spoken to my entire life for the rest of my life. I would have never known her true snaky, nasty colors. I would have never known. But there's like just a couple things that I think should be very clear for people. I'm sure she gave me a 1-star and called me a pussy or whatever. But why the fuck would I call the cops if I thought that house was haunted, Deborah? I'm not a goddamn idiot. I'm like, oh, get the ghost. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? And I should be able to shower. I should honestly be able to shower, period. Like, have an actual shower. But if I just sit on my ass and use a handheld shower thing, so be it. I still want to be able to lock the door, even if I'm taking a shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have the ability for somebody to step in. So it was just a really uncomfortable situation. I think me just saying the husband could potentially be in the house the entirety of your stay. I don't know how to word it necessarily right now, right? There's so many things about it that I hated, but I think, like, the main thing that I want people to know is that there is a man in the house with a dog basically all day, and there's no lock on the bathroom door, and there's no locks on basically any of the doors. So He's saying they're not her because she works at the airport and he doesn't, I guess he doesn't work. Still though, he literally lives across the fucking street. If I'm telling you when I'm coming and going, why can't you just walk your ass over, unlock the door, and then go back home? Why do you have to be there while I'm there? Please let me know what you think. I really look forward to your responses, and I love you. Bye.